Well, hello, and wait until you meet this Firestarter in all the best ways. Because when I learned about Janine Vanderburg, I was like, this is a woman with all the right sparks and fireworks. And the reason why I can say that is because maybe a long time ago, impatience was a flaw of hers, but now it's her superpower. And I love that when there is a problem, and the problem we're talking about today is ageism, and just FYI, it goes in both directions. So we're not just talking about people who are 40 plus, because Youngerism is also alive and kicking. So we want to make sure that when we say ageism, maybe by default, we think that it just means older workers, older people. We're not talking about that exclusively. You want to really get into a lot of what is being done with the systemic issue of ageism, the policy changes that Janine has made, which you wait till you hear like how these things are moving, but also the truth about the state of the state. So we're not dumbing it down. We're not sugarcoating anything. It's all here for you today. And Janine, long time coming and worth every second. So thank you so much.
Lauren, thanks so much for having me. You've been on my bucket list of this must be a podcast that I'm on. So thank you for inviting me.
I am thrilled to pieces because this body of work that is what we see and what you are doing every single day, for many of the folks in the world of work or job seekers, right? They may not know about you because you're on the front line. They're experiencing the actual impact firsthand, maybe just from what they're hearing back, from an interview or a resume. So they may not have like immediate, insights into what you are doing. So tell us about the work that you've been doing at Encore, flip the script, changing the narrative. I mean, there are so many areas, all the awards that you've been receiving. I mean, this is huge.
You bet. So Lauren, and I think thank you for introducing it by saying how people experience it, right? Maybe that job rejection or ghosting or that kind of thing. The biggest takeaway that I've learned literally in the last 7 to 8 years is so many people think that they're just experiencing this individually. It's me. Somehow, if I did something different on my resume, or if I answered this interview question differently, that I wouldn't be overlooked. And to me, what's most important for all of us to understand is that ageism, which is discrimination, stereotyping, prejudice based on age, is systemic. So part of it is it can be in ourselves, and that's called internalized ageism, right? If we make choices, if we decide, you know what, I'm not going to go for that, I don't know about that opportunity, or as women, we tend to do this anyway, right? We haven't met all 90% of the things that they're asking for, so we're not even going to apply. Now layer age onto that. So that's internalized ageism. The reality is, though, that ageism in the workplace is real. Last year, for example, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission received 16,000 complaints of age discrimination, right? That's huge. I'm on a board of the Center for its CWI Labs. We did a survey last year, and over 80% of people who responded thought, yeah, I probably have experienced workplace age discrimination. So that to me is the most important thing to understand, that it happens. It can be in ourselves. It can be in an employment setting. And it also is baked into systems. And what I mean and that's kind of like institutional ageism. So when people have, for example, and this is happening a lot now with automatic tracking systems, if you automatically screen out people because they're a certain age, that's like systemic ageism, and it affects a lot of us. So one of the things, for example, that we did in Colorado, and I'm encouraging other states to pass similar legislation, is we got a law passed that employers cannot ask for your age or your high school graduation date on initial job applications, right? Now, why does anyone need to have your high school graduation date beyond maybe your first job at McDonald's, right? But you don't need that. But it was a way of employers basically ferreting out age. And one of the things that we know, and Resume Builder does these surveys every year, and it is fascinating to me that what they found is that hiring managers screen out both older people age 60 and over, but they also screen out people age 27 and younger. Why do they screen out younger people? Because they say, oh, they don't have enough experience or they don't have the right attitude or work ethic. How did all of us gain our work ethic? We kind of listened to the older people who were in our workplace when we showed up at the job for the first time, right? And did certain things. So it's important for us, I think, all of us to understand that ageism is directed not only younger and older, but also that it resides in us, in the workplace, and in institutions. And so when we're looking at how we're going to solve ageism, we kind of have to fight on all fronts, right? We can't just, very often people are like, well, why aren't you working on this? And I'm like, well, because I'm working on this right now. We can only do so many things at one time, but it's important for us to do all of that.
I have a really kind of unconventional question. I'm sure that shocks you.
Oh, I love unconventional questions.
I want you to tell us the story about when you woke up to the idea that ageism wasn't something that just happened. Not the one that you tell at conferences, but the one that you actually decided could change the world.
So I'm not sure that I decided that I could change the world, but one of the things, I was never aware of ageism as a thing. I was self-employed. I ran my own consulting firm that I had founded in my mid-30s, and I ran it for 3 decades. And so if anything, the ageism that I saw was directed maybe towards some of our younger team members. So I remember a client coming to me and saying, oh, we want you to do this as opposed to this other woman. And I'm like, I don't know a thing about quantitative statistics. And if I run this test for you, it won't work. I can present the data to your board, but you really want this woman to do the quant work. That was kind of the only idea that I had of ageism. But here's what happened during the Great Recession. In my consulting firm, I knew a lot of people, and people usually, when they had younger people graduating, from college, sons, daughters, nieces, nephews, they would say, oh, could you talk to them and maybe, give them some career advice? And I would always do that. I had endless coffees. And what was really weird during the Great Recession is all of a sudden I was getting those same phone calls, but people were asking me to talk to people in their 50s who had been pushed out of work. And I thought, okay, this is like really odd. It was especially odd when the people had amazingly strong sales and marketing backgrounds. And as someone who ran my own company, I was like, the last person that I'm going to hire or get rid of is the person who does our business development. Because during the recession, right, you need that more than ever, Lauren. So I was really stunned, talked to a lot of people. And what I decided to do right then, and it was much more individualistic as opposed to systemic, I started offering classes to train sales and marketing professionals in nonprofit fundraising, because I had worked, a lot of my clients were nonprofit, and what I knew was that, and so it was the idea of transferable skills. Nobody in a nonprofit they want to do the work, they don't want to raise money. And I was like, here are all these amazing people with amazing experience, talent. And so I started doing that. And that was, I think, my first awakening to the idea that people would discount someone because of their age. We ended up doing kind of monthly meetups and getting people together, having career coaches come in, doing kind of mutual support. And so I think all of that then started, and the stories that I heard like every month from the people who started showing up, and we had at one point, I think we had 200 people come to an event, and I was like, okay, this has kind of got out of control here. But I think that set the stage for being able to start changing the narrative, realizing that it was more systemic and we couldn't just do it individual person by individual person, right? We needed to look at systems. So,
I mean, you're at like, what I learned is like over 30,000 people have been through these trainings. And so what is the cliff notes to the training? What is the thing that they are going to walk out of there with that puts a dent in this very stubborn system?
So I would say the cliff notes is this, and I frequently quote civil rights leader Grace Lee Boggs: we are the leaders we've been waiting for. Somebody always wants someone else to come in and solve the ageism problem. Literally, somebody posted on LinkedIn today, why aren't people taking in the streets to protest ageism in the workplace? And I did not say this, but I wanted to say, why aren't you taking to the streets to protest It's all of us. So what we do in our workshops is we talk of, we think of two sets of workshops. We have workshops for civilians, and you and I are civilians,
Yeah,
right?
we're normies.
We are, and it's sort of understanding what ageism is and what we can do about it as individuals, what we can do in our communities, what we can do in our own workplaces, and that kind of thing. Now, through Encore Roadmap, I spend most of my time talking to employers. And when I'm talking to employers, the message is somewhat different. I'm not talking about ageism to employers because then they kind of shut down. HR comes in, they monitor everything I say. I can't answer questions. And so when I'm talking to employers, I say, here's what you're missing out on. You're leaving money on the table. We know that we need experienced talent. I mean, the first reason we need it is demographics, right? Demographics is destiny. We have a shortage of youngins, if you will, right? Birth rates are going down. We could give people $5,000. I don't think that's going to cause a huge uprise in our birth rate. So if we want to have a good, robust talent pipeline of the best talent, we need to be hiring across the age span. So that's number one. But the other thing is, if there was ever a time that we needed experienced talent on all of our teams, it's now. Most of us, the experienced talent, we've been through these times of change, right? We've been through the Great Recession. We kind of been through the post-September 11th environment. We went through COVID. We were the people who could make sure we kept the customers and also find new supply chains. So we need that experienced talent. That's one. The other thing is there's been this bizarre notion lately that with the rise of AI, that we need to get rid of experienced talent. A friend of mine, Mona Morshed, who runs a nonprofit, Generation, right? Mona's fabulous. And her research that she did last fall showed that 90% of hiring managers don't want to hire anybody over age 35 for roles that involve AI. Well, this is obviously a problem because all roles are now involving AI in one way or another, right? And so one of the things that I'm talking to employers about is actually AI power users can actually be your experienced talent because we kind of know the prompts that we should put in. We're better able to interpret the results. So because of our experience, we can look at something that spewed out and say, that's actually BS, and we're going to try this again with another prompt. And we can also mentor, I think, younger people is kind of the third. So for all of those hiring managers who don't want to hire younger people, you've got to. Otherwise, you're going to have this huge gap in your talent pipeline, but you need to retain experienced talent or bring back experienced talent in order to do it. So that's what I talk to employers about, what I talk to all of us civilians about. And most of my training in the past was to civilians. Now it's much more to employers because I think we need to make headway there. But to civilians, all of us have a role and all of us can do something. So we need to educate ourselves. We need to educate our friends, community, etc. We need to be on podcasts like yours, Lauren, talking about ageism and what people can do about it.
I am blowing the lid off of our best kept secret, our 30-day blast program. Yeah, you heard it. 30 days. We have seen so much success for this program that past clients have landed in that 30 days and increased their compensation 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, over 100%. Now, not everybody lands and earns that much in 30 days, but my point is it prepares you. And in 30 days, if you're not out of there with a changed mindset and changed clear and simple ways to be able to navigate the market this year, then we'll gladly refund your misery and you can go back to applying now. Check out the link below for the next 30-day blast, and we would love to have you there because we live for your success, and that's what's really important. See you then.
Hell to the yeah. So I want to take what you just said and ask kind of like the elephant in the room question.
Yeah.
Which is like the math of age inclusion it's irrefutable. It's like,
right.
Right. Like not
right.
McFly, right? Like, come on.
Yeah.
So why do these smart, innovative, leading edge companies, into the future, why do they keep making this expensive choice to ignore the irrefutable facts?
Well, I could be somewhat snarky and say the math isn't mathing, but I think instead I think that ageism is so baked into our culture and our thinking that it takes a lot more of the kind of employer education that I'm doing, that others are doing, to really kind of help people understand the employers that have embraced it the most. The employers that embrace it the most are typically in areas that are facing the most dramatic talent shortages. So, for example, last year, it was the people who were reaching out to me were people in healthcare, right? We know people in government, people in higher education. I mean, there are certain sectors where we're facing huge talent shortages. And so people are like, okay, maybe we do need to consider older and experienced talent again. But I think and this is where kind of the flip the script campaign that we're doing right now, I think is important. We're just trying to get this out on a broader stage that ultimately, if you want the math to work, you need to look at experienced talent, but you shouldn't just be doing it in a to avoid shortages mindset. You should do it because it's going to give you a competitive advantage. And I think once people are exposed to the idea and they see how it works, then they get on board. But there's so much, baked in ageism that and we're surrounded by, our culture, all the media, all the advertisements and everything, that it's easier for people to just accept dated myths and stereotypes as opposed to saying, my favorite question, why do you believe that?
Mm-hmm.
And you ask people, why do you believe that? And then they kind of stop and think.
So this is both good and eye-opening and important. And before we got on this show, as we were talking, I asked the hard question, right? I'm like, okay, like lay it on me. Like, how close are we to ending this? Where are we in this invisible, timeline? And I say invisible because anything can happen at any moment. And in fact, a lot of it has happened. And so you were very candid with me and said, I wish we were closer, right? I wish I could say and come on here and have a parade and all that good stuff. But the truth of the matter is that with a lot of the policy changes, we got to hang on for longer.
Right.
And so I would love to hear, what does that mean to hang on? What does it mean? And how do we stay in a place of both? And this is not an easy, an easy place, right? Where we are disruptive, but we're not also putting ourselves at risk, because that's always the concern. If I'm the whistleblower and I am that person in my company and all of that, then I'm going to suffer the consequences.
Right. Okay. So there are a lot of layers to that question, but let me start with one. I would love to say, oh, we're so close. And by the way, it's going to happen next year. And then I can quote retire. And I don't think we're there. I think that and one of the things, and I feel the need to say this, one of the things that I hate is when people call ageism the last acceptable ism. And so if we look at, sexism and we look at racism and whatever, I don't think there's any legitimate way that we can say, oh, those are over. So now we only need to work on ageism, right? We kind of have to work on all of this together. So set that as a context. There are signs of hope. So I have signs of hope when, on a really small scale regarding me, more people are buying into my message. More people are calling me, wanting me to speak to their teams about how to make this work, how to leverage an intergenerational workforce. We have things like there is the Age-Friendly Institute, Age-Friendly Ventures, runs a certified age-friendly employer program. More people applied last year to become certified. More people have taken the AARP Pledge program, which is basically a pledge that we are going to be an age-inclusive workforces, right? So there are signs like that, and there are companies that are, that are adopting those principles, who are seeing what the future is, right? And the future of the work is intergenerational. So the smart companies are really seeing where the future is. And so I see progress there. At the same time, the title of my talk always used to be how to be an age-inclusive workforce. Well, right now we can't say the word inclusive, right? So I've got to figure out some other ways to describe it. Reality, in the last year, we've had some setbacks because of the political climate overall, and this feeling that has really taken hold in the political climate that, quote, old people need to get out of the way. This is bipartisan, both sides of the aisle. Well, old people need to get out of the way. The problem is when that idea trickles down into workplace, right? Because we're not, I may be a citizen in the community. And by the way, I'm also in the workplace. So if I'm hearing this message nonstop, old people need to get out of the way, I'm carrying in my workplace. So I think that we've got some issues like that we need to absolutely address, and how we keep going. I think I'm not stopping my work, and the other people who are making the business case for older workers in intergenerational teams, none of us are stopping our work. In fact, we're ramping it up, right? We're doing more of that. That's part one. As individuals, we just need to be smart. If you're in the workplace, the last thing that I'm encouraging you to do is to go to someone, if you feel you're being, victimized by ageism, is go and say, yo, being ageist, because it is rough right out there right now in employment for everybody. Yes, document. Yes, try to bring me or somebody else in to talk about the benefits of intergenerational workplaces, but don't put yourself at risk. So, my feeling is, and I've been challenged on this sometimes, people are like, people should stand up wherever they are. And I'm like, no, both things can be true. You can be willing to fight to end ageism, and you can also try to preserve your financial security. And I think this is especially true for women, because we know as we get older, women, and especially women of color, are most likely to face financial insecurity as we get older. So we've got to be smart about ourselves.
You mentioned earlier this kind of individual metabolization of I'm too old for this, right? The narrative that we can carry in our heads. This is a lot of the work that we also do at Portfolio Rocket, right? And so much of this is this idea of reframing it, understanding that some of this is just baked in the DNA of what it should look like. And there are so many wonderful people out there in the world of longevity and the rich roles of the world, and so many people who are now great examples of what it means to look like 40, 50, 60, 70. God bless you, Warren Buffett, like retire, announce his retirement at 94. Like, I love that. So how do we identify or self-identify when we are caught as the biggest obstacles in this equation?
So, Lauren, I actually have an internalized ageism speak up chart, and it has, and I will send you the link to that, and you can kind of share it in your show notes. But it's so common because it's those thoughts that happen to all of us. So it's kind of like having a sheet of little affirmations you can talk to yourself in the mirror about. So when you are thinking, I may be too old to learn this new software, you can recall, I learned this really hard thing. And not only did I learn it, but I mastered it and I taught it to someone else. Or, and it's almost for anything. Am I too old to start this? Well, for me, I've got a personal story and a role model. My mother was someone who always wanted to go to college, and her immigrant family, they sent the boys, but not the girls, to college. When she was nearing 60, she went to my dad and said, Ray, I'm going to college. And he didn't know what to say, but, she walked out the door and went to college, graduated 4 years later. So I think recalling either things that we ourselves have done or looking around and seeing what other people are doing can inspire us. And I think it's really, really important at this life stage to make sure that we're surrounding ourselves with people who have that frame of mind. Because if you are surrounding yourself with people who have kind of that negative mindset, I'm too old to do this, I can't do this, and that kind of thing, you absorb it. So, but I'll send you the speak up chart. It's great.
Love that. So we know that the future, the Rolling Stone says, time waits for no one, right? And so the future is always going to arrive. What would we wish we had done differently about ageism, about this whole area of what I'm not supposed to say, inclusion, when we look back 10 years from now?
I think we those of us who have not stepped up, I don't think I'm going to regret things because like every day I wake up and think, okay, what can I do to fight ageism today? Right. But that's been my drive. That's in my DNA. It's who I am. When my parents would have said, when I was born, I came out saying it's not fair. So that's kind of part of the through line of my life. But I think for all of us, it's looking at what strengths do we have and what can we do about it? So for example, if you're someone, you've got a great friends group and your friends group has maybe never talked about ageism. You could pick up Dr. Becca Levy's book, Breaking the Age Code, and say, let's do a book club reading or something about it. You could educate yourself. You could listen to your podcast and learn more about, all of these topics, but then share it with others. I think the biggest regret that companies will have is not getting on board with this sooner, because we know, I think it's in 2030. So coming up soon, right? It's like tomorrow. So we're going to have more people age 65 and over than under age 18 and under. So if you haven't thought of what your strategy is, you're going to have a problem.
Yes. And they should be reaching out to you. And they should also be really, this has so many tentacles, right?
Right.
So many pieces. And so I want to say, first of all, to you, like from the bottom of my freaking heel, thank you for fighting. And I don't mean that in a pissy way. Thank you for standing up and not just letting the status quo be something that you flick off your shoulder, not even close. And changing policy, especially in Colorado. And who's next?
Well, we don't know. The political climate right now is a little challenging. So I think everybody is kind of maybe has their eyes on a few other things. But stay tuned. I mean, right now there are 5 states that have similar legislation. And I do think it is something that is increasingly important. And what we learned in Colorado was we never just talked about ageism directed against older people. We talked about, hey, people are screening out both younger and older people based on age. And I think that's a really appealing message. It brings allies. It brings more people to doing it. So
in the show notes, you guys, you're going to get the link to Janine. You're going to also see all the materials so that you are part of the culture. You're part of the solution. And if you don't take any action, you'll be part of the problem. So I'm going to provide you with every single touch point to do something about this. Because if you're complaining about it, that's an open door for you to be able to walk right through it and start leading it with us and all the other people that are surrounding you. You're watching it in real time. Janine, thank you again. And for those who have been listening, thank you for listening. Thank you for being such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful audience. As you know, the show is delivered to you straight from my heart into your ears. And we are also growing like crazy. We are at the top 1.5% globally. So that is pretty exciting. And we are also always appreciative of your reviews, because what you have to say is even more important than what I have to say. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll see you next week. All right, Janine.
Lauren, thank you so much for having me.
You're the best. Thank you.
Thank you for joining today. We appreciate your listening ears. Big time. We ask this: use these tools, not tomorrow, right now, and share them by spreading the love, leaving us a rating and subscribe so you don't miss the next career blast in a half. Most of all, thank you for you.